Wednesday live stream,
Hey!
Science Fiction Story Club. Welcome everyone. Welcome back. Let us know you're here this week in the weekly Science Fiction Story Club, where we work our way through the Big Book of Science Fiction, an anthology of short stories edited by Jeff Vandermeer. We are reading the very strange, very confusing, somewhat curious, perplexing, I don't really get it yet, but I hope to by the end of this stream. The New Overworld is the name of today's story by Paul Scheerbart. Yes. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
First things
Hello.
first.
Who are you?
Takashi's in the mix. Welcome. Yes, we're here. I'm Asa, and I write horror stories. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Sarah Ray Werner. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I also write, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Asa Merritt, who is wonderful. So welcome, everyone. Hello.
Yes, welcome, everyone. As I said, this is a weekly sci-fi story club. If it's your first time here, we're reading these stories once a week, working our way through the anthology from a point of view of writers, but also as readers, engaging with these stories to see what we can learn from them. We have a Discord. We'll put that there in the comments here shortly. But let's get into this story, Sarah. So this was one of the shortest stories in the collection, but I would say at a loss almost at how to engage with this story. Mm-hmm. What's like the basic gist for somebody who didn't read it? What's the elevator pitch? What's the bar telling of this story?
Absolutely. So, and I love that you say the bar telling. Asa has taught me how to like summarize things because I am a very long-winded speaker. And so I appreciate this. So we're all at a bar together and I'm telling you about The New Overworld by Paul Scheerbart. See, I'm even making this long. But basically, if you've been here with us for the past few Story Club Wednesdays, we've been talking specifically in science fiction about this form of, I don't know if it's necessarily a form or just a style of storytelling called the conte philosophique. And you say it better than I do, I think.
Conte philosophique.
Okay, yes, that. We're doing that. And it's basically a hypothetical setup, like a fable setup that conveys some sort of, I guess, point. And that's point with a question mark with today's story. So basically, the New Overlord, or the Overworld, which is like 2 pages in this giant book, is a conte philosophique. And it's about this one person who lives on Venus, whose name is Nax. And we're told he's very wise. And he basically solves a series of problems. I did notice... I'll tell you real quick. The problems are about overpopulation and about because it's a weird utopia. On Venus, there are 2 races of people, contradictorily, even though he says there is no trace of terrestrial dualism. He then gives us 2 different races. Hey, Lore, who live on Venus. They're very different. There is a turtle / chubby / unhurried race. And then there is the dynamic race. And it seemed very like Dr. Seussian to me at first. But there's these 2 races, but there's no war because it's pretty much a utopia. And basically they're dealing with overpopulation, and they very easily, at least to me, seem to solve these problems. Now, when I say they, I mean one person solves their problems, and that is the wise Nax. So we're looking at this story, and
I'm already feeling better. So
okay,
just
good.
Being reminded this is the conte philosophique is huge because in that there's a specific question being engaged with, a specific philosophical idea or point that the writer is trying to make vis-a-vis a tale or a fable.
Yeah.
Like we saw in Sultana's Dream. This is a story about womanhood in India, if I recall.
Well,
right?
that was
much.
So,
but this one, you think that the kind of thesis or idea that this writer's trying to get in with is overpopulation.
That I'm not sure of because, and I say that because that is the surface problem that the wise Nax, who is one of the dynamic ones and not one of the turtle / chubby / unhurried ones, this is what Nax is asked to solve, is how can we all fit in this utopia together? But I don't think that's what the story's about. And when I say story, again, like Asa just said, we're not talking about a traditional narrative here. We're talking about a walk through. It almost feels like a demonstration or like an open house of this space. We're just in a space where these two races live on Venus, where it is very hot. And it says a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I started underlining all the contradictions that were happening.
Great, because
Okay.
as did I.
Okay,
so
good.
Maybe they, yes, and maybe we can get folks help from this, Takashi and Laura, if y'all had a chance to read this, because there were some of these things where I'm like, am I missing something, or is this a contradiction?
Yes.
For example, a real surface one that might help us. Are there 3 types of creatures or 2?
I read it as 2,
Just
but tell
2.
tell me what you think about, tell me where you got 3, because that is interesting to me.
I will.
Okay.
I will. Let's see. Okay, so he says that if the nutrition and the food intake of the unhurried, that's 1, as well as the dynamic ones, that's 2, were comparable to the feeding ways here on Earth, but the food wasn't available on the surface of Venus. Da 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 da. Shoot, this is the wrong spot.
Oh, that's okay.
And then
Well,
he also references the turtles. Are the turtles the same as the unhurried ones?
yes, because he describes initially, he says there are 2 contrastingly different kinds of creatures on the hot side of Venus, chubby, idle inhabitants with a sort of turtle fur at their top and bottom, which really made me think of Dr. Seuss.
Good point.
And so there's 2 things I want to bring up. First, Asa, you mentioned a third one, and you said the people here on Earth. So there is a sort of third sentient race that's alluded to in this, and that is us, the Earthlings. And
are Earthlings alluded to?
Let's see. Something, it was in the part about feeding. Yes. Yes, they're comparable to the feeding ways here on Earth is explicitly said.
Yes.
So that there is a third race here that I did not pick up on, that you did. And I think that it reminded me too of The Star by H.G. Wells, where we're here on Earth and something is being taught from or about a distant planet. And what are we supposed to take away from it? I want to look at real quick too, not to like take the helm, but Takashi, I think that's such an interesting question. It does say that Nax is one of the dynamic ones. It explicitly says that Nax is a dynamic one, but it also gives him a label that we don't see for anyone else. And Nax is a wise one, or the wise one. And I'm curious if Nax is a dynamic one who has maybe like evolved or ascended. Because throughout this story, we see in the very first line, Nax is laughing at this own inside joke. And the very first line is, if you can't solve your own problems, said the wise Nax, then you most certainly are not very clever. And he announces this to a crowd who says, absolutely, and they cheer, but they can't solve their own problems. They go to one person. It's sort of like an Aristotle or like a Sophocles or something, where like, we're going to go to you. You're the master. You're the wise one to solve all of our problems, Nax. What's the answer? And so, Takashi, I appreciate you saying that, because there is something different about Nax. And it's that Nax is wise. And it's not, to my knowledge, it's not explained how or why Nax is different.
I don't think so. I think you can make the case that he's not wise. That
more. I want more on that.
That it just could be tongue in cheek. I mean, this is just kind of a like, I don't know. I'm imagining this Nax. First of all, Nax. Who knows what was lost in translation there, but that's like an odd name. And then
that's good to point out too, real quick, is this is a translation. So if I'm getting like really pedantic about the word choices here, that might not be a thing. So
yeah,
thank you.
Per the Dr. Seuss, it's like the Lorax or whatever. Yeah, it's just like a strange name.
Yeah.
He's just up there in front of all these people and is like, if you can't solve your problem, I mean, it's just not a very wise thing to say. I
No.
think
Well,
that's
that's the contradiction. That's another contradiction.
And speaking of contradictions, okay, another reason why he might not be wise is the use of obviously several times in the third paragraph. I'm going to read this, folks. We're talking about the new Overworld by Paul Scheerbart. This is the third paragraph. A grand fertility reigned on the star Venus. Nax and his audience lived there, and everyone suffered a lot under this ample fertility. Venus is obviously not a star which rotates around itself like Jupiter, Mars, and Earth. Venus always has the same side of its spheric body facing the sun, which makes it scorching hot. Obviously, the result is a plaguing fertility on that side of Venus. So I was like getting like some facetious vibes early in this story that like there's some tongue-in-cheekness, which we felt a little bit in that story from The Dark Descent, the shopping mall store.
Yes.
If you're on the stream for the first time, two story clubs on these channels. Thursdays we do horror stories from this collection. One thing we've talked about for several stories is setting up tone early, and these obviously make me think that maybe we're not supposed to take everything seriously. Not sure.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about satirical. I think they specifically called it satirical horror for the Evening Primrose was that John Collier that we read?
Yes.
Which also established very early on that it was satirical. But I also feel like, so we've got a conte philosophique, and how does that work with a tongue-in-cheek, with a satirical tone? Because generally with these stories, what we've seen is they're there to illustrate a lesson, and the contradictions and satire that seem to be present in the story, which again, maybe I am misreading, or maybe we are misreading, seems to obfuscate any obvious like fable conclusion. So in a normal fable, it's tortoise and the hare, the hare doesn't take the tortoise seriously and ends up losing. And it's very plain what our lesson is from the tortoise and the hare. The same thing is true with The Star by H.G. Wells. It's, this thing is coming toward Earth. Here's very plainly what happens or what would happen. With this, there are layers. There are layers of things going on. And it just from that passage that you just read, he says, a grand fertility reigned on the star Venus, ... Venus is obviously not a star. Who is the narrator here? So we have Nax. Who is telling us these obviouslies?
A human. We know that, right? Yeah. Because down here on our Earth, I'd be interested in pursuing understanding this story without even just leaving aside tongue-in-cheekness. It's like, okay, let's take it at face value, because
for what it is.
Even then and then sort of like getting into that after, because I feel out at sea still, just even on like the basic.
That's a good idea.
The basic
let's read
dimensions.
Yeah, let's take a quick journey surface level. I really like that idea, and then we can take a look at the satire / irony / whatever is going on.
Yeah, definitely. Takashi, I see these comments. I'm going to loop back to them, because I think we'll be able to engage with them more intelligently once we just have like the core stuff. So yes, there is this problem. I think what is clear is the setup of the overpopulation problem. Like there at the bottom of 27, it says, one can imagine that this convenience of nature causes considerable inconveniences because of crazy overpopulation.
Yeah.
So if that is the problem, I think it's fair, because there's a huge overpopulation problem. And then Nax, our wise one, the sort of main project of the story is solving this problem. There's too many of us. We can't all feed because we're on top of each other. How do we solve for this problem of too many people? Right. So, okay, that feels good. I'm really just thinking out loud here.
Well, and we have two races to accommodate for. So we have the dynamic ones who are very, oh, hi. I'm at my sister's apartment and taking care of not only a 5-year-old, but a cat. So wish me luck. So the dynamic ones, I think, have like 20 arms. And it says they're uncannily vital, which I'm taking to mean as they just like are very like they bounce around and they yell, and I'm just imagining them being very like vibrant. And then the turtle slash chubby slash unhurried ones are more the philosophers, and they just sit around and chill. Which actually I just got an idea, but I can hold that off until we're looking at another layer of the story.
Oh, I don't know. It's right here. It's right here. Let's hear
Okay.
it.
Well, so we were talking a little bit, and I like that Takashi's comment is still up here. We're talking about like what makes Nax different. Why is Nax in charge of solving everyone's problems? And I made a note of so at the bottom of page 28 in the first column, it says, Nax, the wise one, never stopped contemplating a great deal on the poor freedom of movement and came up one day with the following speech. And we are led to believe before this that I love this. I love that I have to refer to them as the turtle slash chubby slash unhurried ones are the thinkers in this society. And so why are they having a dynamic one, Nax, do all their problem solving for them? And I think that that does maybe touch, and this is maybe for a later part of our discussion, this does touch at the usefulness or uselessness of people who call themselves philosophers who sit around and really do nothing.
Yes.
But I think that's maybe that's going to be something we can talk more about in our second reading. So I threw us off track. You're welcome.
No, that's great. Okay, so we introduce a concept. The concept is a planet, Venus. Venus is special. Why? Because Venus isn't rotating. Half of Venus is always facing the sun.
Which I believe is called tidally locked, if we care.
I do now. Amazing.
Sorry, I can't help it.
Great. It's great, folks. We're literature and science on this stream. Because it's always facing the sun, it gets very hot. Because it's very hot, there is proliferation of life. There is overpopulation. This is the basic problem. Other variables of this world in this story, we have two different types of creatures, the slow, chubby ones and the dynamic ones led by Nax. Okay, so then as the story proceeds, what happens is Nax comes up with a solution to this problem. Are we good? Is that right so far?
Yes. Well, yeah. I think that even before that, I think it's important to say that the narrator has a say in the solving of this problem. And it says that even before a solution, the narrator says, now, before you say anything, yes, Nax's audience didn't know, of course, the brutal idea of just snuffing out some of the expendable offspring. It never came up. So even before that, the narrator is telling us, before Nax comes up with anything, that killing is not on the table, because this is potentially a utopia, question mark.
Right. This says everything about the orientation of the narrator.
Yes.
Which is like, yeah, down here, we always just think about taking them out first.
Right.
That's, obviously an option that we always consider right away.
Yeah.
In this case, these people, the Venusians, that concept doesn't exist for them.
Yeah.
So actually, that is a great observation. And I underline the heck out of that too, because I do think that illuminates the story here and distances the people of Venus towards this utopia interpretation, which is consistent with the conte philosophique possibility here. Okay, I'm with it. I'm with it.
Good.
So what is his solution?
So, so there's a very small series of problems and solutions. And so what happens is Nax, let's see. He thinks on it for days and days and thinks about bridges and stuff. And I want to say that, is this before? Let's see.
The ultimate solution is the balloons.
Right. But I'm looking, is there something that comes before the balloons?
There's bridges and towers.
Oh, thank you. The bridges and towers. Yes. All the towers and bridges didn't suffice. So that was the first thing. So it says all the bridges and towers didn't suffice. There were just too many of them. The turtles covered the ground. But the people up in the balloons, I guess, they're not in the balloons. They are on the balloons. They are walking around on the balloons. Again, very Dr. Seussian. they run out of room. And so Nax has this idea that they add like little extra like blisters onto these balloons so they have more surface area to run around on. And then that works for a while. And then the unhurried / chubby / turtle ones complain that this new overworld, which is the title of our story, which I think is also significant, these philosophical ones start complaining that like, hey, you're blocking out the sun. And that's a problem. And then that is, I think, the next problem that Nax is asked to solve. But before that, before even talking about, I don't know, it's just so weird because it's so short, but there's so much packed in here.
Well, that's something I observed is that all the problems were solved.
Yes.
I had a playwriting teacher that told us once that, all playwriting, dramatic writing is just like setting a pattern and then breaking it. Like at the DNA, like underneath any sort of series of lines or whatever, you could like apply that. I'm struggling to find that here because essentially it's like setup of a problem, overpopulation, which generates this problem, which Nax solves. Oh, but actually there's another problem. Nax solves that also. And the end of the day, he solves all the problems. There isn't, unlike some of these other stories, there isn't a reversal. There isn't a twist.
No.
There isn't a surprise at the end, which made this story even harder for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of like, okay, wait. So, yeah.
Yeah. I do this thing. I have ADHD and I tend to get really excited and jump ahead to the end. So I in this series that we're doing for Story Club on Wednesdays and Thursdays, come join us. I have been covering up the last bit, and I did that for tomorrow's story as well because I wanted the suspense and I wanted to know what the twist was going to be in this story.
Yeah.
And okay, and I think that we could argue maybe that the twist is that there is no twist, or the twist is that this is a satire of something, or the twist is that there's all these contradictions and those serve as like internal twists. Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Wait, we're having some good comments coming in too.
Nadia, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the stream. This could unlock something. Hi all, but now the dynamic ones are far away from the nutrients of Venus. Is the problem solved?
That's a good question.
Another point of this world is that these creatures feed vis-a-vis kind of roots that go all the way to the center of Venus. And so, yes, wait, but did they?
Let's see.
Is this a new problem?
It says it's not a problem because they only feed once a year. Wait, I think, and I want to double check this.
That feels right. They only feed once a year, which means that they could kind of like scoot back down on their balloons.
Mm-hmm. Or even extend it down from the balloons. I'm trying to like see if it specifically says that. Oh, the turtles are very kind and would make room for the dynamic ones by piling up into a stack if room was needed for quiet food ingestion. Yeah, I don't know if later. That's such an interesting question.
Oh, wait
Nadia.
a second. No, we're cool.
Oh, did you find it?
They can totally eat by using longer cords. This is first column towards the bottom of 29.
Oh, yep.
Came up with the idea that one could tie up all the balloons on the crater's edge and let them rise to the sky by using longer cords. Connection with the ground where the food is got from could be made easily, even if the balloons were to rise several miles high. And that is what happened. Soon the balloons were hovering miles above the ground, while at the same time new balloons were forming, populated by many of the dynamic ones. So I think it's handled, Nadia. I think
it is. Well, and I think it's handled, but I think I didn't pay attention to this at this part of the story because I was starting to feel this like collapsing of disappointment that there wasn't going to be a clever twist. So I maybe didn't like ingest as much detail as I did like for the rest of the story. Like I didn't retain this.
That's really interesting. I'm actually extremely curious by that. Like when a reading experience is like disrupted. I want to get into some of these really interesting macro thoughts coming in. Takashi, perhaps the whole theme has to do about authority and the use of power, how it is used to solve or not solve society's problems. I say this because we only have Nax's perspective about Venus's social issues. Let's consider this as a fairy tale told so that us humans may understand. The conflict resides on our interpretation. As Asa said, the contradiction.
There's a lot going on here too. Yeah, I want to go back to the power.
Yeah. Let's use this as like a transition here into the next phase.
Okay.
Theme, power. What do you make of this, Sarah?
Oh boy, I make a lot of things of this. So the story ends. I don't know if we mentioned this already. Everybody's happy. They're celebrating. Nax has solved all their problems. And verbatim from the story, and Nax let everyone worship him as their savior while residing on the top of the biggest balloon, from which no less than 200 club-shaped sub-balloons had grown. And so Nax ends up sort of reaping some benefits, like at least what we would consider due to a leader. In this instance, sorry, a cat jumped on me. But really, we don't see how or why, like we said earlier, we don't know how or why Nax is different, if Nax is simply wise, or if Nax was able to be proven wise because he was put on a pedestal, because he could afford to be, because he was wealthy. Like we don't know a lot of the traditional power exchanges that are going on here that have led to Nax being wise. Is Nax wise because, you know, he came from a wealthy family and his parents could afford to send him to college? You know, we don't know these things. We just know that there is the wise Nax and that he is different from everyone else. And so I think in a conversation about power, that takes a lot of conversation points out of the picture, because we don't have this discussion on wealth disparity. We don't have this discussion on, you know, who are the, like, who's educated and who's not, and who has rights and who doesn't. And I think that is getting at something that is just out of reach of my understanding at this point.
Okay. I'm receiving. You just ran the baton as far as you could run it, and I'm inspired because that's unlocked some stuff. Because it's the rules of reality within which the folks of Venus are living, and I'm so glad you brought up that point earlier. With the rules of reality within which the narrator's living is one in which folks kill each other to solve problems.
Yeah.
In this one, we know that is not a rule of this reality. But like you're saying, there are other things that are also very different about this society. But we have to really like dig and glean and like sieve through the sort of parts to understand that. I think it's really interesting, for example, that the reason why the chubby ones say, hey, we're in the shade, is not out of like the plants aren't growing. It's not like a critical need. It was more of like, we don't like being in the shade.
Yeah, they were like annoyed.
Yeah. So it's like the driving preoccupations of the people, the creatures of this planet are sort of cosmetic or comfort, you know, as which again, if we're like mapping this idea of utopia onto it, if that's the big problem, right? Like if in this, that sounds like utopia to me, where your biggest problem is like, I'm in the shade. You know what I mean?
Yes. The stakes.
The stakes. Okay. Right.
The stakes are low.
The stakes.
Like,
yeah.
I'm I'm in mild discomfort, and I would prefer to have the sun on me. And like, that's the stakes of this story, is, like you said, Asa, mild discomfort.
Right.
And like the dynamic ones not having enough room to like run around as much as they want to. Like,
yes.
So I think that you're onto something there too. I hope I didn't like derail you too much.
I'm really having an unlock experience. Like up until this story, I feel like I entered these conversations with the story mostly unlocked. And the experience of talking with you with them was one of enrichment and kind of depth. Whereas this one felt like I showed up 30 minutes ago with a box that was still locked, and it's starting to unlock.
Yeah.
Nadia.
Yes.
Because of the mention of the Conte Philosophique, I read Nax as a Pangloss-like character. I don't know who Pangloss is.
I
Do
don't
you,
either.
Sarah?
No, I don't either. But is it like a Buddha or I'll just wait for you to tell
Yeah.
us who it is because I don't want to like
Who's
throw a lot of
Pangloss?
yes. Please let us know in the comments.
Yeah. It is okay. Candide by
Oh,
Voltaire.
Candide by Voltaire,
Candide.
which I read in college and have forgotten 100% of. Is it like a well, I'm not gonna
Same. I have not read
please,
Candide,
yes.
and I don't know this reference. I'm so excited to learn.
Oh,
He
okay.
travels the world and explains all the injustices as the best of all possible worlds.
Interesting. I'm sure if the and I'd have to look up because Voltaire, well, I won't look it up now because otherwise this will turn into Sarah goes down a rabbit hole and that you're just watching me type things and nobody wants that. I think that's really interesting. And I wondered too, this brings up a point. It was sort of important in a story that we read previously, The Triumph of Mechanics, that the author was German. It was extremely important to understanding a lot of the story. Yes. Um, and in this too, I want to say Paul Scheerbart was German. Yes, and he is German. He died in World War I. It doesn't say anything about his personal politics, just that he was an eccentric genius. But I'm wondering if there's something like cultural here too that would be important, or if Paul Scheerbart maybe was arguing with Voltaire in mind. I'd have to know like when
Yes,
Voltaire was
right.
active, or if this is in conversation with a piece that we don't know about at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's all plausible. What the introduction does have to say, and I'll just read a tiny short bit of it here. The new Overworld, the name of the story, never before translated into English, exemplifies Scheerbart's style and approach. Light, taking liberties with science, but also unique and playful in its speculation. So yeah, I mean, I think like what Vandermeer, the editor of the anthology, says is most special, I think, about this writer, this story and how it embodies this writer is how it kind of bridges to some extent this like explicitly, totally idea-driven model of the conte philosophique with something weirder, with something more like storyish and so on. Because I'm wondering if something like Candide is a more explicit. It makes me think of like Dante in the Inferno. It's like he's our tour guide of this thing. Nax is sort of in this like he doesn't occupy that position. He is a character.
Yes.
He is, it's not like the narrator is, there's a significant distance between the narrator and that character.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking too of in Shakespeare. I'm terrible at Shakespeare, but who was like shepherding around Henry? Who am I thinking of? Who? Okay, maybe that's like not the right thing to ask, but oh my gosh, my Shakespeare is so rusty. I need to like go back and read all the classics. I need to go back and read my college curriculum so that I can address like I need to read Candide and I need to read Henry IV, Richard IV.
Yes, I mean
it'll come to me.
There's one thing we all need to read everything again.
Yes, read everything all the time again forever.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I'm just going to turn it to the table. Takashi, at the time the story was published, World War I conflicts were brewing. We are at the peak of colonialism and resource exploitation. So yeah, this story was written
1911. Well, it was published in 1911. I don't know if it was written before that, but it was published in 1911.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of there's all kinds of readings we could put into this if we were writing term papers. Definitely the expansionism. We're building these balloons, the kind of like how tech can get out of control. That is definitely all there on the page here. Like Sarah, as a writer, for you, did you find anything like particularly inspiring in this story that you feel like you could maybe apply to your own work?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was mostly frustrated with this story. And it frustrated me, and maybe we'll get some clarity out of this part of the conversation looking at this as writers, because I would be unsatisfied writing something like this. I would be dissatisfied with it as I was with reading it. Like if I had written this, it wouldn't pass. It wouldn't be interesting for me to write because there's no actual conflict and there's no actual stakes. Now, again, this might be just part of the conte philosophique, like Sultana's Dream, which we read, where it's basically a tour through utopia and the end. But it was so frustrating because nobody aside from Nax, and maybe this gets back to our power discussion. Nobody aside from Nax not only seems to have no agency, but seems to have no interest in making things better, in solving their problems. They don't have any initiative. Like, if the American workforce, you go in, you say like, I've got initiative, I will solve problems. You go into that, you'll kill that interview. That's great. But like nobody, and maybe that's what the power is in this, is Nax as the wise one, realizing that he is able to do something. He's able to solve problems. Like, it feels very basic. But what I'm reading in a lot of the other characters, in 99.9% of the other characters, is they don't understand that they can change things. They don't feel like they're allowed to. Maybe they don't have permission to change things. Stop me if any of this is rolling in a weird way, but there might be something there too, because that frustrated me.
Yeah. And I think like, right, like every story has its own logic, its own rules, is inventing its own conventions with which it should be engaged, and so sometimes I always try to sit down to a story and like meet it on its terms to try to get the most out of it, and that's what I tried to do here. It's like, this is not this is unlike most stories that I've read. Yeah. So I have to learn the rules of the story so that I can appreciate it. And I feel like I either still don't really get the rules, or this is just a game that I don't really want to be playing, kind of what you've said. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if there is some kind of underlying logic that I'm not quite sensitive to. I'm having that feeling in the same way that, like, if you run up against like fragment poetry, you have to kind of like let that wash over you in a way that's really specific. And so I'm kind of trying to do that with this, just like, okay, a series of images of a planet, the creatures of this planet, this strange, bizarre character. And I'm trying to like let all those things hit me and coalesce into some kind of takeaway or feeling, but I'm struggling. So I'm kind of right there with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting to me that this one person has to fix everything. I even wrote my frustration in the margins. Where is this going? ? Exclamation point. And I wonder if there's something going on in that one Earth reference that you pointed out earlier. In acknowledging that an Earth exists, it's also acknowledging that we come to this with human contexts. And some of our human context has to deal with how we see power, how we see agency, how we see wisdom, and how we see, like, how we deal with problems. And again, like the oh, there's no killing here thing is a little cheeky nod to the context that we're bringing with us. And so, boy, that might be part of it too.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have Jeff here to explain the inclusion of this a little more clearly. But that actually brings me to something I am excited to definitely talk about, which is influence.
Yes.
How works influence each other, especially since we're learning about this grander, larger tradition of science fiction. That was actually a really cool thought that I found in the introduction.
Yeah, tell us more here.
Yeah, so briefly, Vandermeer is basically like, it's a crying shame that this guy didn't have a more direct influence on more people. His stuff is so important, But then he says, I'll just read the little section. Sadly, this novel and Scheerbart's other science fiction have not exerted much influence on German science fiction in the modern era. This is the part I really like. But in considering influence more as diaspora, it may be useful to think about connections between Scheerbart and his contemporaries, such as visionaries like Alfred Cuban, author of the gateway to a cascade of other connections, including Kafka.
Mm.
So I do really love that thought about how the kind of butterfly effect of literature amid writers, and how it's like this particular story wasn't even translated until this volume. Much of this person's work has never been translated. It didn't even start getting translated until 80 years after they died or whatever. And yet we can see the impact and effect of this writer in other places. And I like that. That's really inspiring and beautiful to me, that like every little thing we put out, if someone reads, it might find its home somewhere else.
Yeah, I like that
Laura
too.
Huntress, I noticed that in the introduction it says Scheerbart liked to ponder engineering projects. So maybe this was simply an exercise in that rather than a fully fleshed out story.
Maybe. And I think it's interesting. I think in the introduction, it even said that like he invented his own, or he was trying to invent his own perpetual motion machine. Like,
right.
Yeah, he was that kind of person.
Right. Yeah, that's a fun like little thing worth sharing. If you don't have this edition, Vandermeer identifies this writer as someone who could, quote, legitimately be called an eccentric genius. And per Laura's point, yes, Scheerbart was an engineer. He was all these things.
Yeah. And I think just real quick, while we're talking about the diaspora, just before we move on, because I like Takashi's point here too. I think it's also interesting that there was a suggestion that maybe Scheerbart didn't catch on because he was drowned out by the arrival of Edgar Rice Burroughs publishing A Princess of Mars the following year in 1812. And it is alluded to that the popularity for that story, which was really huge, drowned out whatever Scheerbart was doing here and didn't really let it get a chance to flourish on its own. So like it became and remained like a hidden gem that maybe other writers, like you said, like Kafka, were influenced by, but the general public didn't see. It's like one of the rungs on a ladder. It's just a missing rung on the ladder. We just see this one, we can climb up, but like there was a rung, and it was Paul Scheerbart.
Right. I mean, essentially, the story club could become the foundation for his great resurgence.
Yes. I don't know if I want him to research.
Oh, JK.
But to Takashi's point, the diegetic elements of the story become irrelevant. I believe the author wanted to provoke discontent, frustration. Provoke. I love your word. I did feel provoked by this story. I felt annoyed. I felt angry. I felt irritated. What are your thoughts, Asa, on that?
I think that's an exciting take. I'm here for an exciting take. I think that's really interesting, and I like entertaining that. That seems like presumptuous almost to sort of think that was his goal, but maybe not. And I'm excited to kind of imagine that it was, because that is kind of a cool thing narratively when you deny an expectation. You know, that is exciting, that like he didn't give us an ending that was satisfactory. So yeah, I'm interested in that.
I appreciate that. I want to ask, I'm always curious about titles.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because you caught a connection to the title. Where's the connection to the title?
Yeah, the New Overworld is, so the title of the story is The New Overworld, and ostensibly, at least at first glance, it appears to be talking about this balloon world that the wise Nax builds above the planet Venus itself. Okay. And so the story being named after the New Overworld is, again, I feel like trying to tell us something that I am not picking up. Like it's telling us that this is important, and more important maybe than I initially read. To me, the character well, I read for characters, and so to me, like, I wanted to know, like, who's in conflict with Nax. Is there, is there someone that he's trying to impress? Is there some reason? Does he have a motive for being so helpful? Is his motive to end up being worshipped like a god and a savior, which is what happens in the end of this? Is that his mission? He seems so motiveless, other than he himself is just annoyed and wants to solve these problems. Okay, sorry, I'm like just going off here, but yeah, the new Overworld. Was there something specific that I had said earlier, or that you noticed that like you wanted to talk about with that?
Well, I like looking at that as a potential entry point to further understanding the story, but I still don't even see it though, because to me, the new Overworld of the balloons isn't, that just seems like, I don't understand, at least on the surface, how that detail is more exceptional than
Right.
any of the other developments.
Right. It would be like if Sultana's dream were called the flying car, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it feels incidental.
Right.
But like, okay, a word, can I say too, a word like overworld feels political to me. And I'm not projecting anything on here, I don't think, but it's just a strange word. And again, maybe that's a translation thing. But what a powerful word. What a powerful word to use. Overworld. The new overworld.
Yes, I think you're onto something there. And I do think it's worth going back to that one sentence. I'll read it one more time.
Yeah, please do.
Of course, the brutal idea to just snuff out some of the expendable offspring never came up. The concept of killing was unknown to the Venusians. I think that could be that could be the pit at this peach here. This line is, and because I think that is consistent with a reading of the title of like, this is a better way to live. Right. Over as in above, new as in like rejecting the old. So what we can say about this world is even though it's a world in which the stories end unsatisfactorily, even if it's a world in which the protagonist doesn't have clear motives, it is a world where people don't kill each other.
So we've got that utopia. I don't know, but there's no murdering.
Yeah.
Oh, my friend. I feel better having talked this out with you. I feel like I got some valuable insights. I feel like I understand maybe a little more what he was going for, if not complete understanding of this story. But yeah, like what are your lingering thoughts, your lasting thoughts here?
Yeah, I think it's just understanding myself better as a reader and being able to really listen to myself as I read, and like just kind of be like, oh, I'm perking up, or like, oh, I'm shutting down, is useful for me as a writer. Just being able to kind of like get really sensitive with that tuning fork. And yeah, for me, I definitely shut down at times through the story. Like the sort of so much of it was kind of abstract and strange. Just the volume of strange elements and the absence of familiar ones left me unmoored. And I think that just speaks to my own taste as a reader, that I wanted to feel a little more connected to things that were a little bit more familiar.
Or if they were weird, I wanted them to be weird for a reason. And I think that's part of why I love weird fiction. I love weird stuff. There's a reason that I'm in speculative fiction, horror, or story club with you here. It's like, I want stuff to be weird, but in order for stuff to be weird or different from the norm, we have to understand the norm. And like, is the norm supposed to be Earth? And like, what then is the point of having two races, both of which extend hairs down into the planet that feed once a year? It just it starts to spiral out of control, and it's not weird in an interesting way. It's weird in a, where is this going kind of way.
Yes.
So I think I agree with you, and I just had to be more wordy about it.
I love that. I mean, this for everyone who doesn't know, Sarah runs this great podcast called the Right Now Podcast by Sarah Ray Warner. And it makes me think of this because in this week's episode of the podcast, Sarah's talking about how curiosity
Mm.
is a writer's greatest asset. I encourage y'all to check out the pod. It's 30
Thank you.
minutes of this idea really fleshed out. But I think that is kind of a cool way to engage with this question of like how our curiosity is being sated, denied,
Mm.
obstructed by a story as it unfolds, and then kind of what the resulting experience is. And
Yeah.
it's like I entered curious, and then my curiosity was like given the runaround or something.
Yeah.
Is kind of my experience.
Yeah, given the runaround is a great way of putting it. We did a bunch of fetch quests and didn't get any experience for it. So that's, to use some very academic terminology
I
there.
don't know what that means.
Okay, video
What's a
game.
fetch quest?
A fetch quest is just basically like, gather me 10 pelts of wolves,
Got
and then
it.
you bring them back and you get like a coin, and you're like,
Okay,
why did I do
right.
this?
Yes,
It's like
I
meaningless.
sought pelts and
Right.
received no coins.
Busy work. It's busy
Yes.
work in a video
Okay.
game that's supposed to be fun. And I feel like we're getting that here in a story, but maybe, we're supposing a story is supposed to be fun and entertaining. I mean, I don't know. So this felt fetch questy to me.
Takashi says perhaps a juxtaposition of ideas or solutions, maybe?
Juxtaposed against so are you talking about like, oh, on Earth we would think let's just murder everyone, which I disagree. A lot of Earthlings would not immediately be like, well, why don't we just murder everybody? I would not be among the people who wanted to murder everybody, by the way. And but yeah, so I don't know if like that's the juxtaposition that you're talking about, is how we deal with problems differently than people on Venus.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, this was bound to happen, Sarah. What week is this? This is what, week 4 or 5?
Is it bad if I don't know?
4 or 5.
Is it bad if I have to go back? Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Week 4.
Takashi, you identified
Okay, yeah, that's okay.
Oh, Narrative Vault's in the mix.
Hey,
Welcome,
Narrative Vault. I'm happy
Overworld
you're here.
is used a lot in games. It's a hub.
Maybe that's why I'm thinking about video games, because like that's what Mario, like if you play, Mario, like, oh, it's the Overworld, and I choose 1-1, 1-2, whatever to go to. Yeah, Overworld. I don't know. I want to keep thinking about this. Maybe this will be one of those stories that like we'll chew on, and then like 6 months from now we'll be like, I figured it out.
I hope so.
Maybe
that would be. I mean, that would be the promise. That is the promise of Sci-Fi Story Club, y'all.
Yeah,
we're so glad you're here. This collection has more than 100 stories.
Oh yeah.
I'm very genuinely excited to revisit this story after reaching the end of this collection, because I am certain that it'll become more clear.
And maybe we'll have more context at this point too. We'll understand more about the Conte philosophique, which I cannot pronounce. And we'll maybe understand a little bit more about how sci-fi has grown and changed. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah. Well, everyone, more context about what we're up to here. Sarah and I, we're both speculative fiction writers, and we're both passionate speculative fiction readers as well. And so what we're doing here is we're working our way through this anthology week by week, story by story, to get better at writing. And we're so grateful that you're here. We also do horror stories. So every Thursday, we're working our way through this collection, same time. And tomorrow, we are discussing.
Read the title of tomorrow's story. It's so good.
Yeah, the new mother, right? So, new Overworld, new mother, a ghastly, almost 150-year-old tale.
It's so good.
The New Mother by Lucy Clifford. That is what we will be discussing tomorrow. You can find it online if you want to join us. Laura Huntress told us in the Discord that this did not scare her whatsoever. This was nostalgic.
Yes.
So it scared me. For
Wonderful.
Sci-Fi Story Club next week, everyone, we're reading Elements of Pataphysics by Alfred Jarry. This is another translated work. This is translated from the French.
Mhm.
Sarah, do you want to read us the first sentence for good measure?
Yeah, it seems very meta. I'm going to be very interested to dig into this one. So yeah, next week's sci-fi story, part 1 definition, and there's even for this part a dedication to Thede Natanson, which probably not pronounced correctly, but the epiphenomenon is a byproduct that arises from a phenomenon. Pataphysics, the etymology of which should be written, and then there's a whole bunch of Greek. So this is going to be an interesting read.
Yes,
It
love
looks
it.
very metaphysical textbooky. I don't know. So I'm very curious to see where this story goes.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for like manufactured knowledge systems.
Yes. So we'll see if it's that. We'll see if it's something else. I'm noticing equations. I'm noticing it's interesting. Each part is dedicated to a different person. The surface of God is, I think, where we're eventually getting here. So stay tuned.
That's where I've always wanted to get
The
to.
surface.
So.
Yep. We're going to measure infinity, everyone.
There's the Discord link. Everybody join the jam. We're having, the conversations keep going and you can keep up with everything. On Fridays, we write. We also usually write. This Friday is a little up in the air. We might do a late night situation. We're kind of both in flux. Sarah's on the road. But generally speaking, context for the channels, Sarah and I do the Sci-Fi Story Club Wednesdays, Horror Story Club Thursdays, and some live writing together on Friday.
Yeah. I was saying earlier, I'm excited on Friday. Like, despite being on the road, if we can still make it work, I have a story idea that I want to write. So
incredible.
I'm here for it. I'm here for
it. Do you want to give us like a tease? What's up? Well, only if you want to. Only if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I'm staying in my sister's house, and I was like, you know what? I just really need to record like a little 3 or 4 like part or mini episode podcast or something about my sister's house, which is definitely not haunted, and just kind of play around with being in this space. And I just kind of wanted to play around with that. So
that sounds great. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time.
All right. Bye, friends. See you soon.